The clinking of ice in his whiskey glass was the only sound that dared to break the suffocating silence. Elena watched Liam, her husband of 5 years, as he stared out the penthouse window at the glittering, indifferent city below. This was supposed to be their anniversary, a celebration of the life they had meticulously built. But the man before her was a stranger, his shoulders tense, his jaw set in a way that had nothing to do with love. When he finally turned, his eyes, the same ones that had once promised her forever, were as cold and hard as the glass in his hand. "I'm leaving you," he said, the words cutting through the fragile hope she'd been clinging to all night. He didn't just choose another woman. He chose to shatter Elena's world on the one night she was planning to tell him it was about to expand, with the secret of a new life stirring within her. The scent of roasted rosemary and garlic filled the apartment, a warm, savory cloud that stubbornly defied the evening's chill. Elena adjusted the sleeve of her silk maternity blouse, a recent purchase, still loose enough to conceal her nascent bump, and gave the herb-crusted rack of lamb a final, satisfied look. Everything was perfect. The table was set with their wedding china, the one they only used for special occasions. A bottle of expensive champagne, a gift from a client of Liam's, was chilling in a silver bucket, though she would only be having a celebratory sip. In the center of the table, a single white rose stood in a slender vase, a mirror of the one he had given her on their first date. 5 years. It felt like a lifetime, and no time at all. She smoothed her hand over her belly, a secret smile playing on her lips. Tonight, she would give Liam the ultimate anniversary gift. After 2 years of quiet heartache, of negative tests and forced optimism, it had finally happened. They were pregnant. She imagined his face, the surprise melting into joy, the way he would drop to his knees and press his ear to her stomach, talking to the tiny person who was a part of them both. The thought sent a giddy, warm tremor through her. The clock on the wall chimed 8, then 8:30. A familiar knot of anxiety began to tighten in her chest. Liam was late. He was often late. His work as a lead architect at his father's prestigious firm was demanding. But tonight was different. He had promised. "I'll be home by 7, Elle. We'll open that bottle and celebrate properly," he'd texted that morning. She sent a quick message. "Hey, everything okay? Dinner is ready when you are. Sexuom." The 3 dots appeared, then vanished. No reply. By 9:15, the lamb was cooling. The candles were burning low, and the anxiety in her chest had morphed into a dull, heavy dread. She had changed out of the silk blouse and into a comfortable cashmere sweater, the pretense of a glamorous anniversary dinner feeling more and more like a foolish charade. The jingle of keys in the door finally came just before 10. Liam walked in, shedding his tailored coat and dropping his briefcase by the door with a thud that echoed the sinking of her heart. He didn't look at her, didn't seem to notice the beautifully set table or the aroma of the carefully prepared meal. He walked straight to the bar cart and poured himself a generous measure of whiskey, the clinking of the bottle against the glass, sharp and jarring. "Liam? I was so worried," Elena said, her voice softer than she intended. "I made the lamb you love." He took a long swallow of his drink before finally turning to face her. His face, usually so handsome and expressive, was a cold, unreadable mask. There were no laugh lines around his eyes, no warmth in his mouth. He looked exhausted, but it was more than that. He looked empty. "We need to talk," he said. His voice was flat, devoid of emotion. Elena's hands grew cold. She wrapped her arms around herself, a subconscious gesture to protect the secret she held. "Okay. What is it? Is it work? Your father?" He shook his head, avoiding her gaze as he stared into the amber liquid in his glass. "It's us, Elena." Each word was a stone dropping into a still pond, the ripples spreading outwards, chilling everything they touched. "Us?" What about us? Did I do something wrong? She asked, her mind racing through the last few weeks, searching for a misstep, an argument, anything that could explain the chasm that had suddenly opened between them. It's not working anymore, he said, finally meeting her eyes. They were stark, clinical. I haven't been happy for a long time. The confession hit her with the force of a physical blow. A long time? She thought of their shared laughter last week over a silly movie, the way he'd held her hand at his firm's gala, the comfortable silences they shared over Sunday morning coffee. Had it all been a lie? Was she that blind? I don't understand, she stammered, her throat tight. Happy? Liam, we've been trying for a baby. We've been building a life. A flicker of something. Annoyance? Guilt? Crossed his face before it was gone. I know, and I'm sorry. I should have said something sooner. He drained his glass and set it down with a decisive click. I've met someone. The floor seemed to tilt beneath her feet. The carefully constructed world she inhabited, wife to a brilliant architect, future mother, partner in a life of shared dreams, crumbled into dust. The air rushed out of her lungs. Someone? The word was a pathetic whisper. Her name is Amelia, he said, and the fact that he gave her a name made it brutally, terrifyingly real. She's a junior associate at the firm. It's serious. Elena sank into one of the dining chairs, her legs no longer able to support her. The perfect table, the single rose, the cooling lamb. It was all a monument to her own delusion. She stared at him. This man she had loved with every fiber of her being, the man whose child was growing inside her, and saw only a stranger. The betrayal was a physical pain, a sharp, searing agony in her chest. For how long? She managed to ask, the words scraping her raw throat. A few months, he admitted, his gaze finally dropping to the floor. Months. Months of lies, of stolen moments, of her sleeping in their bed alone while he was with her. The sickness rose in her throat, hot and bitter. So that's it? She asked, a hysterical laugh bubbling up. 5 years of marriage, you just throw it away for a junior associate you've known for a few months? It's not like that, Elena. It's complicated, he said, running a hand through his perfectly styled hair in a gesture of frustration that felt utterly staged. I don't want a messy divorce. My father, the firm, it needs to be clean. I've had my lawyer draw up a settlement. It's very generous. You'll be taken care of. A settlement. A business transaction. That's all their life together was worth. The grief that had been choking her was suddenly burned away by a flash of white-hot fury. He stood there, talking about a clean break and a generous settlement, as if he were closing a business deal, not detonating the life of the woman who had sacrificed her own ambitions to support his. He had no idea. He had no idea about the secret she held, the tiny, fluttering heartbeat that tied them together in a way no legal document ever could. She looked at his cold, detached face, at the impatience in his eyes, and the words she had been so desperate to say died on her lips. She would not give him this. She would not hand him this precious secret to be factored into his settlement. She slowly got to her feet, her movement stiff and robotic. She walked past him, past the mockery of their anniversary dinner, and into the bedroom they had shared. She closed the door behind her, the soft click sounding as final as a coffin lid shutting. Sinking onto the edge of their bed, she wrapped both arms tightly around her stomach, a fierce, protective gesture. The tears finally came, silent and scalding, streaming down her face for the man she had lost and for the child who would now be born into a broken home. The dream was over. This was the cold, harsh reality. The morning light that filtered through the floor-to-ceiling windows was pale and merciless, illuminating the wreckage of the night before. Elena had slept in their bed, a vast, empty expanse of cool linen that still held the faint, traitorous scent of Liam. She hadn't cried herself to sleep. The shock had been too profound, leaving her in a state of suspended, numb disbelief. Now, in the harsh light of day, the pain was beginning to seep in, a slow, creeping poison. The apartment, once her sanctuary, felt alien and hostile. Every object held a memory, every corner a ghost of a shared moment. The photograph on the bedside table, the two of them on their honeymoon in Tuscany, laughing, their faces glowing with sun and love, was a cruel joke. She turned it face down with a trembling hand. She had built her entire world around him. When they met, she was a brilliant coder, a rising star at a small tech firm, with dreams of launching her own venture. He was the golden boy, the scion of the prestigious Sterling architecture dynasty, charming and ambitious. He'd been captivated by her mind, her independence. "You're not like the other girls, Ella," he used to say. "You have a fire in you." But slowly, subtly, he had extinguished that fire. His life was all-consuming. The late nights, the networking events, the constant pressure to live up to his father's legacy. He needed her support, her unwavering presence. "I can't do this without you," he'd plead. And she, besotted and in love, had believed him. She'd put her own career on the back burner, taking on freelance projects she could do from home, managing their lives so he could focus on his ascent. She became the perfect corporate wife, an elegant, intelligent accessory on his arm. And she had told herself it was worth it. For him, for them, for the family she was so desperate to build. A noise from the walk-in closet startled her. "Liam!" He was back. A foolish, desperate flicker of hope ignited in her chest. Maybe he had reconsidered. Maybe it was all a horrible, whiskey-fueled mistake. She found him pulling a designer suitcase from the overhead shelf. He was already dressed in a crisp suit, his movements efficient and detached. He was packing. "What are you doing?" she asked, her voice raspy. "I'm moving my things out," he said, not looking at her as he began taking suits from their hangers. "I'll stay at the club for a few days until Amelia's lease is up. It's better this way. Cleaner." Cleaner? There was that word again, as if their life together was a stain to be wiped away. "So you're just leaving," she said, the absurdity of it all making her feel lightheaded. "You walk in, blow up our lives, and then you pack a bag and walk out like you're leaving for a business trip?" "Elena, please, don't make this more difficult than it has to be," he sighed, finally turning to face her. His expression wasn't angry or sad, just weary. He looked at her as if she were a problem to be managed. "I told you. I've left the settlement papers on the kitchen counter. My lawyer, Mr. Davies, will be in touch with whomever you choose to represent you. I'm being more than fair." Her eyes drifted to the papers on the polished marble island, a thick, intimidating manila envelope that held the monetary value he had assigned to their 5 years together. "Fair." The word came out as a choked laugh. "You think you can put a price on this? On me? I'm giving you the apartment, free and clear. It's worth over $3 million, and a lump sum of $500,000. That's enough for you to live comfortably for a very long time." He delivered the lines as if he'd rehearsed them, a speech designed to placate and dismiss. He saw it as generosity. She saw it as an insult. This apartment, which his father had gifted them as a wedding present. The money, a pittance from his family's vast fortune, meant to silence her and ensure a smooth, scandal-free exit. He didn't see her contributions, the freelance projects she'd worked on late into the night, the income from which had paid for their vacations, their cars, the small luxuries his salary didn't cover while he was still a junior partner. He didn't see the career she had sacrificed, the social connections she had built on his behalf, the emotional labor of propping up his ego and soothing his anxieties. He saw none of it. And he had no idea that the woman standing before him, the one he was trying to pay off like a discarded employee, was independently wealthier than his entire family. A strange calm washed over her. The need to fight, to scream, to beg simply evaporated. What was the point? The man she had loved was gone, replaced by this cold, calculating stranger. Pleading with him would be like pleading with a brick wall. "Fine," she said, her voice eerily level. Her quiet acquiescence seemed to surprise him. He paused, a suit jacket halfway into his bag. "Fine?" "Yes, fine," she repeated, her gaze steady. "Go to your— Amelia, I'll read the papers. My lawyer will be in touch." He seemed relieved, a small, patronizing smile touching his lips. "Good. I knew you'd be reasonable, Elle. You always were." He zipped up his suitcase and rolled it towards the door, pausing beside her. For a moment, she thought he might touch her, offer some gesture of comfort, however hollow. Instead, he just looked at her with a detached pity. "Take care of yourself, Elena," he said, and then he was gone. The front door clicked shut, the sound final and absolute. Elena stood frozen in the silent apartment. The shock had finally worn off, and in its place, a new feeling was taking root. It was a cold, hard, and unfamiliar thing. A fury so profound it felt like a core of steel solidifying in her gut. He had not just broken her heart. He had insulted her intelligence, dismissed her worth, and underestimated her completely. He thought she was the reasonable, dependent wife he could pay off and forget. He was about to find out how wrong he was. She walked over to the closet, not to his empty side, but to the back, to a dusty corner she hadn't visited in years. Behind a row of winter coats was a small safe. She spun the combination, her fingers moving with remembered certainty. Inside was a sleek, black, encrypted laptop. She carried it to the kitchen island, placing it down beside the insulting settlement offer. She sat down, her posture erect, and lifted the screen. The device whirred to life, the login screen glowing in the dim morning light. Her fingers flew across the keyboard, typing in a complex password that was a string of alphanumeric code. The screen flickered, and a secure, encrypted interface appeared. It was a world away from her domestic life, a ghost of the woman she used to be. And at the center of the screen, in clean, minimalist font, was a single word: Aether. The laptop felt like an artifact from another life. Its cool, metallic surface was a stark contrast to the warm, domestic world she had inhabited for the past 5 years. As the Aether interface loaded, Elena felt a jolt, a strange mix of trepidation and homecoming. She was no longer just Elena Sterling, the soon-to-be ex-wife. She was Cassandra, a name whispered with reverence in the most exclusive circles of decentralized finance and blockchain technology. A ghost. A myth. Before Liam, this had been her life. Aether was her brainchild, born from late nights fueled by coffee and code, a passion project that had spiraled into a revolution. It was a decentralized autonomous organization, DAO, a fully automated financial protocol governed by smart contracts on the blockchain, designed to be more transparent, efficient, and equitable than any traditional banking system. She had written the original white paper, coded the foundational architecture, and launched it into the world under the cloak of anonymity. She wanted the project to be judged on its merits, not on the identity of its creator, and it had worked. Too well. Aether had exploded. Its native token had skyrocketed in value, and the treasury, which collected a small fee from every transaction on the network, had swelled to an unimaginable size. It had become a behemoth, a self-sustaining financial ecosystem managing billions of dollars in assets. And she had walked away. When she met Liam, his world of tangible structures, of steel, glass, and concrete, seemed so much more real than her own world of intangible code. He'd been impressed by her freelance work, but when she tried to explain the complexities of ether, his eyes had glazed over. "It sounds like a fun little hobby, Elle," he'd said with a patronizing smile. "But you can't build a life on internet money." In her desire for a normal life, for marriage, for a family, for his approval, she had let him believe it was just that. A hobby. She had built herself a back door, a secure administrative key that would allow her to intervene in catastrophic situations, but she had let the community-elected governance council run the day-to-day operations. She had become a silent observer, watching her creation flourish from the sidelines. Now, logging into the administrative dashboard for the first time in years, the numbers on the screen made her dizzy. The treasury wasn't just large, it was astronomical. 9 figures. 10. It had crossed the billion-dollar mark and kept climbing. It was a self-perpetuating engine of wealth, and she, Cassandra, held the master key. Her mind reeled. She looked from the glowing screen, representing a fortune beyond comprehension, to the manila envelope Liam had left on the counter. His generous settlement. The lump sum of $500,000 felt like an insult of cosmic proportions. He was trying to buy her silence for less than 0.05% of what she had quietly built, while he was busy climbing his father's corporate ladder. The sheer, staggering irony of it was almost comical. A new kind of power, cold and clear, began to flow through her veins. It wasn't about the money itself. She had lived modestly, her needs simple. It was about the validation. The proof that the world she had built, the one he had dismissed, was infinitely more vast and powerful than his own. The psychological battle began to rage within her. Part of her, the wounded, heartbroken part, wanted to throw it all in his face. To call him, screaming the numbers from the screen, to watch his arrogant facade crumble as he realized the magnitude of his mistake. She imagined the humiliation, the groveling, the desperate attempts at reconciliation. But another part of her, the cold, logical coder, Cassandra, counseled caution. Revealing her hand now would be an emotional outburst, not a strategic move. Liam had hurt her, but he had also underestimated her, and in his underestimation lay her greatest advantage. He saw her as weak, dependent, and reasonable. It was time to use that perception against him. She spent the rest of the day immersed in the world she had left behind. She read through years of governance proposals, community discussions, and development updates. Ether had evolved, grown, become more than she had ever imagined. The community was vibrant, intelligent, passionate. They spoke of Cassandra with an almost religious awe. She was the oracle, the first coder. They had no idea she was a pregnant woman in a cashmere sweater, sitting in a multi-million-dollar apartment she was about to lose, her heart shattered by a faithless husband. The anonymity she had once cultivated for ideological reasons now became her most powerful shield. As Elena Sterling, she was a victim, a scorned wife to be pitied. But as Cassandra, she was a titan. The plan began to form, not as a detailed blueprint, but as a series of quiet, decisive steps. This would not be a war of scorched earth. It would be a game of chess. He had made his opening move, confident and arrogant. Now it was her turn. She would not use Ether's billions to crush him. That would be too easy, too crude. It would also expose her, and she wasn't ready to give up the shield of Cassandra. Not yet. She would fight him on his own terms, in his own world. She would use the weapons he understood, lawyers, assets, and the slow, meticulous dismantling of his power. She closed the laptop, the screen going dark. The initial shock and grief were still there, a heavy ache in her soul. But they were no longer all-consuming. They were now mixed with something else, something she hadn't felt in a very long time. Purpose! She picked up her phone and dialed the number of the top divorce attorney in the city, a woman known for her sharp mind and ruthless tactics. She would not be the broken wife. She would be the architect of her own redemption. Liam Sterling had started this war, but she was going to be the one to finish it. And she would do it not just for herself, but for the tiny, innocent life growing inside her. The offices of Clara Rowe were the antithesis of the opulent, old-money stuffiness of Liam's father's firm. Located in a sleek, modern tower of glass and steel, the space was minimalist and bright, with abstract art on the walls and an air of quiet, formidable competence. Clara herself was a woman in her late 40s, with sharp, intelligent eyes, an impeccable bob of dark hair, and a presence that radiated both empathy and an unspoken promise that she did not suffer fools. She was known for handling the city's most high-profile, contentious divorces with a combination of legal brilliance and surgical precision. Elena sat opposite her, a file containing Liam's settlement offer on the polished glass table between them. She had intentionally dressed down, in simple trousers and a soft gray sweater, a deliberate choice to present herself as exactly what Liam believed her to be, a woman of modest means, completely dependent on her husband's largesse. "Thank you for seeing me on such short notice, Ms. Rowe," Elena began, her voice steady despite the tremor in her hands. "Please, call me Clara," the lawyer said, offering a small, reassuring smile. "I've reviewed the documents you sent over. Standard procedure for the Sterling family's counsel. They like to come in with a strong opening offer to intimidate and encourage a quick, quiet settlement." She leaned forward, her expression turning serious. "The question is, Elena, is it a fair one?" Elena looked down at the envelope. "He called it generous." Clara gave a short, humorless laugh. "Of course he did. They always do. He's offering you the apartment, which, while valuable, was a gift from his father, and likely wouldn't be considered a divisible marital asset anyway, and a lump sum of $500,000. In exchange, you waive any and all future claims to his income, his inheritance, and his stake in Sterling architecture." She tapped a perfectly manicured finger on the document. "Tell me, what do you estimate his current net worth to be?" "I'm not entirely sure," Elena admitted, which was the truth. Liam was deliberately opaque about his finances. His salary is around $400,000 a year, but there are bonuses, stock options, and his family's wealth is substantial. "Substantial is an understatement," Clara said, pulling up a file on her tablet. "The Sterlings are one of the city's oldest and wealthiest families. Liam is the sole heir. His future inheritance is likely in the 9-figure range. This offer," she gestured to the envelope, "isn't generous. It's an insult. It's designed to make you go away quietly so he can install his new girlfriend with minimal fuss." Hearing it laid out so clinically, so starkly, reignited the cold fire in Elena's gut. His new girlfriend, Amelia Vance, a junior associate at his firm. Clara's eyes sharpened. "He told you about her?" "Yes, he said it's serious." "I see." Clara made a note. "The infidelity will be useful for leverage, though this state has no-fault divorce, so it won't change the financial outcome on its own. It primarily serves to establish his motive for lowballing you." She looked at Elena, her gaze softening slightly. "This is a difficult position to be in. My advice, based on what's in this file, would be to counter with a demand for significantly more spousal support and a larger share of the liquid assets accumulated during the marriage. We can subpoena his financial records, but it will be a fight. His father will bring out the big guns to protect the family fortune." This was the moment. The crossroads. She could follow the standard playbook, fighting for scraps from his table. Or she could start playing her own game. "I want to reject the offer," Elena said firmly. "Good," Clara nodded. "But I don't want to counter, not yet." Clara paused, intrigued. "Go on." "I want you to dig," Elena said, leaning forward. I want to know everything about Liam's finances for the past 5 years. Every credit card statement, every investment, every wire transfer. I also want to know everything about Amelia Vance, her background, her financial situation, how she was hired at Sterling. I want to know when, exactly, their relationship began. A slow, appreciative smile spread across Clara's face. You're not interested in just getting your fair share. You're building a case. I'm gathering information, Elena corrected gently. He thinks this is a simple financial transaction. He's forgotten who I was before I met him. I want to remind him. She still didn't reveal her secret. Not even to Clara. Ether was her ace, a card to be played only when it would have the most devastating impact. For now, she would operate in the world Liam understood. She had another, smaller, secret weapon he had long since forgotten about. There's something else, Elena said, pulling a thin folder from her handbag. Before we were married, I had my own investment portfolio, mostly early-stage tech startups. Liam called them my hobby projects. He never took them seriously, so they were never merged with our joint finances. They remained solely in my name. She pushed the folder across the table. Clara opened it, her eyebrows rising as she scanned the contents. The portfolio was a curated list of small, seed-round investments in companies that had, over the past 7 years, become major players in the tech industry. My God, Elena, Clara breathed, looking up from the pages. This is impressive. You have an incredible eye. Based on these valuations, this portfolio alone is worth around $8 million, Elena finished for her. Give or take, depending on the market. Clara stared at her, a newfound respect dawning in her eyes. The narrative had changed. Elena was not the destitute wife being cast aside. She was a woman of independent means, a shrewd investor in her own right. This changed everything. He has no idea about this, does he? Clara asked. He knows it exists, but he probably assumes it's worth a few $1,000s at best. He stopped asking about it years ago. This is our first move, Clara said, her voice electric with strategic excitement. We don't reveal this yet. We let him think you're desperate. We reject his offer without comment. We file our subpoenas for his financial records. We let him get arrogant. We let him try to bully you, and when he does, we show him he's not the only one with resources. Elena felt a surge of relief so profound it almost made her weep. For the first time since Liam had uttered those life-shattering words, she wasn't alone. She had an ally. And she had a plan. There is one more thing, Clara, Elena said, her hand instinctively going to her stomach. I'm pregnant. The lawyer's professional composure dissolved, replaced by genuine shock and compassion. Oh, Elena, does he know? No, she said, her voice dropping to a whisper. And he can't. Not yet. I won't have my child used as a bargaining chip in his settlement offer. Clara nodded slowly, her mind clearly processing this explosive new variable. The stakes had just been raised exponentially. This was no longer just about money or pride. It was about protecting a future, an innocent life. Your secret is safe with me, Clara said, her tone fierce and protective. We will handle this. We will let Mr. Sterling think he is in complete control of the board, but he has no idea what game we're truly playing. The days that followed were a strange limbo. Elena moved through her silent, cavernous apartment like a ghost, the routines of her married life now hollow and meaningless. But beneath the surface of grief, a different kind of energy was humming. The rediscovery of Cassandra and the meeting with Clara had awakened a part of her that had long been dormant. The strategist, the builder, the woman who saw complex systems not as obstacles, but as puzzles to be solved. Her first step was to reconnect with the world she had created. Each evening, after a day spent dealing with the mundane logistics of separation, canceling joint credit cards, changing passwords, she would open the black laptop. She didn't log in as an administrator. Instead, she used a public-facing handle she'd created years ago. Core, named after the Greek goddess of the underworld, a persona who was just another member of the ether community. As core, she slipped back into the forums and discussion channels. She asked questions, offered opinions on governance proposals, and engaged in technical debates. It was exhilarating. These people were brilliant. Their passion for the decentralized future she had envisioned was palpable. They spoke of Ether's potential to bank the unbanked, to fight corruption, to create a more transparent world. It reminded her that her creation was more than just a treasury of immense wealth. It was a movement. No one suspected that the thoughtful, insightful core was also the mythical Cassandra. This anonymity was her shield, allowing her to gauge the health of her creation and feel its pulse without revealing her presence. This quiet re-engagement was more than just a distraction. It was a reclamation of her identity. During the day, she focused on her other secret project, understanding the enemy. Clara's team of private investigators were surgical and discreet. They began to feed Elena a steady stream of information, painting a picture of the betrayal that was far deeper and more calculated than Liam had let on. Amelia Vance was not some naive, star-struck junior. She was 28, ruthlessly ambitious, and came from a family with significant social standing but dwindling finances. Her Instagram profile, which was public, was a carefully curated gallery of her life. Sailing trips, charity galas, equestrian events. She was positioning herself not as a mistress, but as a replacement. A significant upgrade, in her mind, from the quiet, unassuming Elena. There were photos of her at events Elena had been unable to attend due to morning sickness she'd disguised as a stomach bug. In one picture, taken at a gallery opening 2 months ago, Amelia was wearing a familiar emerald necklace. A chill went down Elena's spine. It was a necklace Liam had claimed to have bought for his mother's birthday. The timeline was the most painful part. The affair hadn't started a few months ago. Credit card statements, meticulously analyzed by Clara's forensic accountant, showed hotel bookings, expensive dinners, and lavish gifts dating back almost a year. A whole year of lies. While Elena was timing ovulation cycles and injecting herself with hormones during a brief, difficult round of fertility treatments, Liam was wining and dining his replacement. The cruelty of it was breathtaking. He hadn't just fallen out of love with her. He had actively deceived her during the most vulnerable period of their marriage. The pain was a physical entity, a weight in her chest that made it hard to breathe. There were moments, usually late at night, when the fury would recede, leaving behind a raw, desolate grief. She would curl up in bed, clutching a pillow, and mourn the man she thought she had married, the future she had believed in. She would whisper to the tiny life inside her, promising it would be loved, that it would be enough. These moments of sorrow were essential. They weren't a weakness. They were the fuel. They reminded her why she had to be strong, why she had to be strategic. She began to see the power imbalance of her marriage with stark clarity. It hadn't just been about money or family connections. It had been about information. Liam had held all the cards because he had controlled the narrative. He presented himself as the burdened, brilliant architect, and she, the supportive, slightly naive wife. He had compartmentalized his life so effectively that she had only ever seen the carefully edited version he wanted her to see. Now she was the one with the information. She knew about the secret bank account he'd opened 6 months ago. She knew about the weekend trips with Amelia, disguised as site visits. She knew the timeline, the lies, the depth of the betrayal. And he knew nothing. He had no idea she was watching, listening, piecing together the truth. He had no idea about the $8 million portfolio waiting in the wings. And he certainly had no idea that his quiet, reasonable wife was the anonymous creator of one of the largest decentralized financial platforms in the world. One afternoon, a message came through from the lead investigator. It was a piece of audio, captured legally by a source near the firm. It was a snippet of a conversation between Liam and his father, Harrison Sterling. "Just sign the papers and be done with it," Liam's voice said, tight with annoyance. "She's being difficult." "Difficult how?" Harrison's gruff voice replied. "She rejected the offer. No counter, just silence. Her lawyer is sending subpoenas. It's a classic shakedown, Dad. She's going to try and bleed me." There was a pause. Then Harrison's voice, cold and dismissive. "I told you that girl was a mistake, Liam. Too much ambition for her own good. Don't worry. We'll handle her. Davies will bury her in paperwork. She doesn't have the resources to fight us. Squeeze her. Freeze the joint accounts. Let her feel what it's like to be cut off. She'll come crawling back to the table within a week." Elena's blood ran cold. Squeeze her. The callousness. The arrogance. They saw her as nothing more than an inconvenient pest to be crushed. They were about to make a move. A classic power play to leave her financially stranded and desperate. She forwarded the audio file to Clara with a simple message. "They're making their move. I think it's time to let them see one of our cards." A quiet smile touched her lips. They thought they were squeezing a mouse. They had no idea they were poking a dragon. The call came from her bank 2 days later. A polite, apologetic manager informed her that their joint checking and savings accounts had been frozen by a legal directive from Mr. Sterling's attorney. The credit cards she had used for years were simultaneously declined when she tried to order groceries online. Harrison Sterling's directive had been carried out. They had cut her off. For a moment, a primal panic seized her. It was the feeling they wanted her to have. The cold dread of being powerless, of having your lifeline severed. It was a stark reminder of the life she had been living, one where her financial security was intrinsically tied to Liam's goodwill. She had allowed herself to become dependent, a fact that now felt like a personal failing. But the panic lasted only a moment. It was quickly replaced by a cold, resolute calm. This was not a surprise. It was a predicted move in a game she was now prepared to play. She hung up the phone, took a deep breath, and called Clara. "It's happened," Elena said, her voice even. "The accounts are frozen." "As expected," Clara replied, her tone crisp and ready. "Arrogant fools. They're walking right into our trap. Are you ready?" "I'm ready," Elena said. The plan was simple, elegant, and designed for maximum psychological impact. It wasn't about unleashing overwhelming force. It was about a precise, surgical strike that would shatter Liam's perception of her and sow the first seeds of doubt in his mind. Clara's office drafted a letter. It was not addressed to Liam's counsel, but directly to Harrison Sterling's chief financial officer, a man known for his meticulous, risk-averse nature. The letter was polite and professional. It expressed confusion over the freezing of the joint accounts, stating that Ms. Sterling had ample personal resources and had no need for marital funds for her legal expenses or living costs. To substantiate this claim, the letter included a single attachment, a verified third-party valuation of Elena Sterling's private investment portfolio. It was not a full breakdown, just the top-line summary, the current market value, certified by a top accounting firm, $8,245,000. The letter concluded by politely suggesting that to avoid any unnecessary legal complications or public scrutiny of the Sterling family's aggressive tactics against a woman of independent means, it would be prudent to unfreeze the marital accounts immediately. It was a checkmate delivered with a smile. Elena could only imagine the scene when that letter arrived. It wouldn't have been a dramatic explosion, but a quiet, stunned silence in a mahogany-paneled office. Harrison Sterling, a man who prided himself on knowing everything, on controlling every variable, had just been completely blindsided. The broke, dependent wife he had intended to squeeze was, in fact, a multi-millionaire in her own right. The response was almost instantaneous. Within 3 hours, Clara received a terse, formal email from Liam's lawyer, Mr. Davies, stating that the freezing of the accounts was a regrettable administrative error and that all funds were once again accessible. There was no apology, no explanation, just a clipped, professional retreat. The silence from Liam himself was deafening. Elena knew his father would have called him immediately. She could picture Liam's confusion, his disbelief. Elle? No, that's impossible. Her hobby projects? She was just playing around with a few $1,000s from her old job. He would be scrambling, his entire understanding of the woman he'd married tilting on its axis. He had cast her in the role of the damsel in distress, and she had just revealed herself as a queen with her own army. That evening, as she was making a simple dinner, her phone buzzed. It was Liam. Her heart hammered against her ribs. It was the first time he had tried to contact her directly since he'd walked out. She let it ring, her hand hovering over the screen. Answering would be a mistake. Talking to him now would be emotional, messy. She needed to maintain tactical distance. He let it go to voicemail. A minute later, a text message appeared. "We need to talk. That money. Where did it come from? Call me." The text was a crack in his armor. The confident, dismissive man was gone, replaced by one who was confused and demanding answers. The power dynamic had begun its slow, seismic shift. She didn't feel triumph. Not yet. But she felt a grim satisfaction. He was seeing a version of her he had refused to acknowledge for years. He had dismissed her intellect, belittled her ambitions, and now those very things were coming back to haunt him. She didn't reply to his text. Instead, she opened the black laptop and logged back into the Ether forums as core. She immersed herself in a complex debate about a new security protocol, her mind sharp and focused. She was building, contributing, creating value in a world of her own making. Liam's world was one of inherited wealth and corporate power plays. It was a world built on perception and intimidation. She had just proven that she could not be intimidated. He thought he was playing chess with a pawn. He was about to find out he was facing another queen. The game had just begun, and for the first time, Elena felt a genuine, unshakable belief that it was a game she was going to win. The first move was hers, and it had landed exactly as intended. The discovery of Elena's multi-million-dollar portfolio changed the texture of the conflict. The Sterling family's legal team, clearly acting on Harrison's rattled instructions, shifted tactics from aggressive intimidation to meticulous, invasive scrutiny. They were no longer trying to starve her out. They were trying to claim her success as their own. Their new legal argument was that her investment portfolio, while held in her name, should be considered a marital asset. They claimed her success was only possible due to the stable home environment and financial security provided by Liam. The argument was as insulting as it was predictable. It was the last refuge of a man who could not fathom a woman's success being her own. Liam, goaded by his father and his own wounded pride, clung to this narrative. He had to believe he was somehow responsible for her fortune. Otherwise, the story he told himself, the story of the brilliant husband and the dependent wife, would completely unravel. The battle escalated, moving from letters and emails to formal legal proceedings. The next step was the deposition. It was to be held in a neutral conference room at a third-party legal firm, a sterile, impersonal space for a confrontation that was anything but. Elena walked in with Clara at her side. She was now visibly pregnant, her condition no longer a secret she could easily hide. She had informed Liam via Clara a week prior, a cold, formal notification that had reportedly left him speechless and enraged, convinced it was some sort of ploy. He was already there, sitting beside his lawyer, Mr. Davies. He looked thinner, his face drawn and tired. The easy arrogance was gone, replaced by a sullen, simmering anger. When his eyes landed on her, and then on her swollen belly, his expression was a toxic cocktail of fury, confusion, and a flicker of something she couldn't name. Guilt? Regret? It was impossible to tell. Amelia was not present. Clara had informed her that their relationship was already showing signs of strain under the pressure. The deposition began. Davies, a slick, silver-haired man, led the questioning. His strategy was clear: to belittle Elena, to portray her as an amateur who got lucky, and to build a case that Liam was the true architect of their financial lives. "Mrs. Sterling," Davies began, his tone dripping with condescension, "let's talk about this portfolio of yours. A few fortunate bets on some internet companies, is that right?" "They were strategic, long-term investments in sectors I understood well," Elena replied, her voice calm and measured, just as she and Clara had rehearsed. "And you made these investments with what capital precisely?" "With income from my own freelance software development work and savings from my career prior to the marriage." Liam scoffed audibly from across the table. "Freelance work? Elena, you made a few $1,000s a month building websites for dentists. Let's not pretend you were some tech mogul." Clara shot him a warning look. "Mr. Sterling, you will allow the witness to answer the questions." But Liam was too agitated to be silenced. "This is ridiculous. That money, her success, it happened while she was married to me, while she was living in my home, benefiting from my name, my connections." This was the moment. The culmination of all the lies, the dismissals, the years of being underestimated. This was the trap they had so carefully laid. Clara leaned forward, her voice dangerously soft. "Mr. Sterling, since you seem so confident that your wife's financial successes are intrinsically tied to you, perhaps you could enlighten us. Are you familiar with a decentralized autonomous organization known as Ether?" Liam frowned, confused by the non-sequitur. "Ether? No, what is that? Some other little project of hers?" "Hardly little," Clara said, a sharp glint in her eye. "It's one of the largest and most successful DeFi protocols in the world. Its treasury currently manages assets in excess of $1.3 billion. Davies shifted uncomfortably in his seat, clearly unsure where this was going. Liam just looked blank. $1 billion? What does that have to do with anything? Clara slid a slim, bound document across the table. "This is the original white paper for the Ether protocol, published 7 years ago under a pseudonym. And these," she added, placing a set of notarized, cryptographically signed documents next to it, "are the original deployment keys and Genesis block signatures. Digital fingerprints, if you will. Fingerprints that have been authenticated by 3 of the world's leading blockchain forensics firms." She paused, letting the weight of her words fill the silent room. She then turned her gaze to Elena. "Elena," she said, her voice clear and strong, "could you please tell the room the pseudonym under which you authored this paper and launched the Ether protocol?" Elena met Liam's gaze across the table. The anger in his eyes was slowly being replaced by a dawning, horrified confusion. She held his gaze, and for the first time, she did not look away. "Cassandra," she said. The name hung in the air. To Liam, it meant nothing. But Davies, whose firm had a growing tech law division, went pale. He snatched the document, his eyes flying across the first page, then to the forensic reports. His jaw went slack. "Wait," Liam said, his voice a confused rasp. "What is this? What's Cassandra?" Davies looked at his client, his face ashen. "Cassandra," he said, his voice barely a whisper, "is the anonymous founder of Ether, a legend in the tech world. They say she's one of the wealthiest and most influential figures in the entire blockchain space. Her personal holdings are estimated to be—" He trailed off, unable to finish the sentence. Clara finished it for him. "Her personal holdings, derived from the initial token allocation, are currently valued at just over $900 million. An asset that was created, developed, and launched 2 years before she ever met you, Mr. Sterling." Silence. A deep, profound, soul-shattering silence. Elena watched Liam's face. It was a slow-motion collapse. The confusion, the denial, the desperate search for some other explanation, and then, finally, the horrifying, world-altering comprehension. The blood drained from his face, leaving it a sickly gray color. He looked at her, truly looked at her, as if for the first time. He wasn't seeing the quiet, supportive wife. He was seeing a stranger, a titan, a woman so far beyond his comprehension that she might as well have been from another planet. The generous settlement. The $8 million portfolio he'd tried to claim. It was all pocket change. Dust. He hadn't just made a mistake. He had made a blunder of such historic, catastrophic proportions that it would define the rest of his life. He hadn't just left his wife. He had fumbled $1 billion dynasty. He opened his mouth, but no sound came out. He just stared, his world, his ego, his entire sense of self-worth imploding in the sterile quiet of that conference room. The power imbalance hadn't just been shifted. It had been annihilated. The fallout from the deposition was not a loud explosion, but a quiet, devastating implosion of Liam's world. The news didn't break in the tabloids. Clara's team made sure of that with ironclad, non-disclosure agreements, but it ripped through the rarefied circles of the city's elite. The story was too shocking, too delicious to remain contained. Harrison Sterling, the patriarch who controlled everything, had been rendered impotent. His son, the Golden Boy, had been revealed as a fool of monumental proportions. The Sterling legal team capitulated immediately. The aggressive Mr. Davies was replaced by a team of subdued corporate lawyers whose only job was to facilitate a swift and silent surrender. All claims on Elena's assets were dropped. The divorce papers were redrafted, this time to her exact specifications. She asked for nothing from him. Not a dollar, not a piece of furniture. She wanted only one thing: a clean, absolute severance. She kept the apartment not because she needed it, but because it was hers, a silent monument to his miscalculation. Liam's attempts to contact her were frantic and pathetic. He left dozens of voicemails, his tone shifting from disbelief to rage to desperate, pleading remorse. "Ella, call me. We need to talk about this misunderstanding. How could you not tell me? All these years! You made me look like a fool." "I made a mistake, Elle. A terrible, terrible mistake. I love you. I never stopped loving you. It was Amelia. She meant nothing. We can fix this. Think of the baby. Our baby." The words, which might have once shattered her heart, now felt hollow and transparent. He didn't love her. He loved what she represented. Power, wealth, a status so far beyond his own that he couldn't even grasp it. He was a drowning man clawing for a life raft. She listened to the messages with a detached, clinical sadness, then deleted them. His relationship with Amelia disintegrated almost immediately. The ambitious junior associate had hitched her wagon to a rising star in the Sterling dynasty, not to a publicly humiliated fool who had fumbled $1 billion fortune. Their curated romance, built on ambition and mutual self-interest, could not withstand the harsh glare of his failure. Their arguments, according to Clara's sources, were spectacular. She accused him of being an idiot. He accused her of being a gold digger. Within weeks, she had cleared out her desk at the firm and vanished from his life, another casualty of his catastrophic error in judgment. Elena, meanwhile, moved with quiet purpose. She began the slow, deliberate process of stepping out of the shadows. She couldn't remain the mythical Cassandra forever, not if she was going to raise a child and run a global foundation. Through a carefully managed press release issued by Clara, she revealed her identity to the Ether community. The response was overwhelmingly positive. They embraced her, thrilled to finally put a face to the name of their visionary founder. She was no longer hiding. She started the Ether Foundation, a philanthropic organization dedicated to funding education for girls in STEM and supporting female-led tech startups. Her new life began to take shape, one built not on a partnership with a man, but on her own vision, her own intellect, and her own terms. One cool autumn evening, about a month before her due date, there was a knock on her apartment door. It was Liam. He looked awful. He had lost weight, there were dark circles under his eyes, and his expensive suit hung on him as if it belonged to another man. The arrogance had been completely stripped away, leaving behind someone lost and broken. "Elena," he said, his voice raw, "please, just 5 minutes." She hesitated, then stepped aside, letting him into the foyer but no further. I don't understand," he said, looking around the apartment that was once his. "Why didn't you ever tell me? Why did you let me believe you were someone else?" Elena looked at him, and for the first time, she felt not anger or pain, but a profound sense of pity. He truly didn't get it. He couldn't comprehend a world where a woman's identity wasn't defined by her relationship with him. "I didn't let you believe anything, Liam," she said, her voice soft but firm. "You saw what you wanted to see. You wanted a wife who was supportive and uncomplicated, who wouldn't overshadow you. So that's what you saw. You never once asked about the complexities of my work. You dismissed my passions. The woman you thought I was a reflection of your own needs and your own ego. I was always Cassandra. You were just never curious enough to find her." The truth of her words seemed to land on him with a physical weight. He sagged against the doorframe. "I destroyed us," he whispered. "I had everything, and I threw it away for nothing." "No," Elena said gently. "You didn't destroy us. You revealed what was already broken. You revealed who you really are, a man who only values a person based on what they can do for him." She placed a protective hand on her belly. "I told you about the pregnancy, not as a weapon or a bargaining chip, but as a fact. This child is my daughter. She will be raised by me. She will inherit my legacy, not my money, and she will never be used as a way for you to get access to my fortune." He looked up, his eyes filled with a desperate final plea. Can I be a part of her life?" Elena was silent for a long moment. The vengeful part of her wanted to say no, to cut him out completely, to make him pay for his betrayal for the rest of his life. But then she thought of her daughter, and she knew that hatred was a heavy burden to place on a child. She would not be defined by his cruelty. She would be defined by her own grace. "You can be her father," she said quietly, "but you and I are over. There is no going back. Any relationship you have with her will be on my terms, with clear, firm boundaries. It will be a privilege you have to earn, not a right you are owed. Do you understand?" He nodded, a broken man finally accepting the consequences of his actions. He knew he had lost her forever. He had chosen his mistress, and in doing so, had lost an empire he never even knew existed. The birth of Maya was not the dramatic, frantic event Elena had once pictured with Liam by her side. It was a calm, peaceful affair. Clara was her birthing partner, a steady, reassuring presence in the delivery room. When the doctors placed the tiny, red-faced infant on her chest, Elena felt a wave of love so fierce and all-encompassing it left her breathless. This tiny person, with a tuft of dark hair and her own determined scowl, was the future. Months melted into a beautiful, exhausting, joyful blur. Elena discovered a capacity for love she hadn't known she possessed. Maya was the center of her universe, a bright, beautiful star around which her new life gracefully orbited. The Ether Foundation was launched to global acclaim. Elena, no longer hiding behind a pseudonym, became a powerful and respected voice in the worlds of technology and philanthropy. She was featured in magazines, not as a billionaire's scorned ex-wife, but as a visionary founder, a role model, a force for change. She invested in companies that mattered, mentored young women who reminded her of her younger self, and used her vast resources to build a better, more equitable world. She was no longer defined by Liam's betrayal. She was defined by her own resilience, her own brilliance, her own grace. The pain of what he had done had not vanished entirely. It was a scar on her heart, a reminder of a past life. But it no longer had power over her. It was simply a part of her story, the catalyst that had forced her to reclaim the incredible woman she had always been. Liam, true to her terms, began the slow, difficult process of earning a place in his daughter's life. He started with supervised visits at the apartment, an hour at a time. He was awkward at first, a stranger fumbling with a baby who had no idea who he was. But he was persistent. He showed up. He was sober. He was humble. Elena watched him from a distance, her heart holding a cautious, neutral space. He had broken her trust, but for Maya's sake, she was willing to let him try to build a new, different kind of trust. He would never be her partner again, but perhaps, in time, he could truly be a father. His own life was a shadow of what it had been. He'd left his father's firm, unable to endure the constant whispers and pitying looks. He was trying to start his own small architectural practice, a humbling endeavor after the grand heights he had once occupied. He was a man reduced, not by her vengeance, but by the weight of his own choices. One sunny afternoon, Elena was sitting on a bench in the park, watching Maya take her first wobbly steps on the soft grass. Her daughter stumbled, fell, and looked up at her, her face crumpling, ready to cry. But then she saw her mother's smiling, encouraging face, and instead of crying, she pushed herself up and tried again. In that small moment, Elena saw everything. The fall, the moment of pain, the decision to rise and try again. It was the story of her own life. She had stumbled, she had fallen, she had been broken. But she had not stayed down. She had risen stronger and more whole than ever before. She looked at her beautiful, resilient daughter, and then up at the bright, limitless sky, her heart full of a quiet, unshakable peace. The future was not something that happened to her. It was something she was building, block by block, a magnificent structure built on a foundation of her own strength. The story of Elena is a powerful reminder that our deepest betrayals can often lead to our greatest transformations. It's a testament to the fact that a person's true worth is never defined by someone else's inability to see it. If her journey from heartbreak to empowerment resonated with you, please give this video a like and share it with someone who might need to hear this message. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell for more stories of resilience, redemption, and the incredible power of the human spirit. Thank you for watching.